And welcome back to EDH Deck Building. I am your host, Demo, and these are the top 10 commanders from Battle for Baldur's Gate. Now, I will first start by saying I will not be including any of the background commanders in this list. Shocking, I know. I've talked about this quite a bit already. I'm sure a lot of people have talked about the whole background thing. There is a lot to talk about there. I already made a video where I talked about how I thought the background commanders worked really well in the 99 of a lot of decks. A lot of them are very archetype specific. So if you're in that particular archetype, they'll slot nicely into your deck. The background, same thing, maybe better in the 99. I don't know. If you can find good matchups with your background commanders and your backgrounds, that's great. I didn't find a lot of great matchups, to be honest. I thought a lot of the background commanders were very generic in what they were doing or very archetype specific, and the backgrounds as well. So not a lot of great matches there. You know, if you're looking for a background and a background commander to synergize nicely with each other, there really isn't a lot. I think that a lot of the backgrounds just give you some nice generic effect with your commanders. I mean, that's my opinion on it. I'm certainly not too excited about any of the backgrounds or background commanders. Whether I liked the mechanic or not, I'm not really getting excited about any of them. But getting to the list here, starting at number 10, Minthara, Merciless Soul, 2 white and a black. Elf Cleric 2/2 has Ward X, which is really neat, where X is the number of experience counters you have. I really like that ability a lot. So the ward will be getting better and better as the game goes on, which is really neat. Also, we're dealing with experience counters here, which is something we haven't seen in a while. At the beginning of your end step, if a permanent you controlled left the battlefield this turn, you get an experience counter. I really like that ability a lot as well. So lots of different ways to build around that, right? Lots of different ways that you can have stuff leaving the battlefield. And then also creatures you control get +1/+0 for each experience counter you have. So a nice little bump there for the payoff of getting the experience counters. Now, I will just say this, experience counters work across the board, right? So you can very easily throw Daxos the Returned in this deck if you're making it. Has nothing to do with enchantment tribal at all, but if you look at Daxos' second ability, pay 1 black and a white, put a white and black spirit enchantment creature token onto the battlefield. It has this creature's power and toughness are each equal to the number of experience counters you have, right? So you don't have to get any experience counters off your Daxos at all. You're getting all the experience counters off your Minthara, and then with your Daxos, you can just start cranking out those enchantment creature tokens equal to whatever your experience is. So that's going to be a great include here. You can use the whole experience counter thing from other commanders. But I just love the open-endedness here of just having stuff leave the battlefield. You can do a blink theme, you can do a sacrifice theme. There's a lot of things you can do here. I really like that ward X as well, where X is the amount of experience counters you have. So as the game goes on, your ward gets a lot better on your commander. You could have like ward 8 on your commander, and it's going to be really hard for your opponents to target it. Coming in at number 9, Mazzy, True Sword Paladin. 1, a red, a green, and a white halfling knight 3/4. Whenever an enchanted creature attacks one of your opponents, it gets +2/+0 and gains trample till end of turn. And one of the things I missed when I first talked about this card in my spoiler video is this: whenever an enchanted creature attacks, period. Doesn't have to be a creature you control. So that's interesting. If your opponents are doing it as well, when they attack another opponent, it will get that bump and trample. Also, you can play enchantments on your opponent's creatures, right? And you could do even a bit of a goad theme here if you wanted to. So this commander is a lot more open-ended than I originally thought. But then on top of that, whenever an aura you control is put into your graveyard from the battlefield, exile it until the end of your next turn. You may cast that card. So for me, I've never been a big fan of auras because it is sort of the opposite of value, where when you lose the creature that has the aura on it, you lose the aura as well. This gets around it. This fixes, in my opinion, the biggest issue with auras. This is the best aura commander out there, I think. There's a lot of aura and equipment commanders, and there's a couple specifically aura commanders. This to me is the best. I think this is the best aura commander out there because, first of all, the versatility of it, but also I really like the fact that you are fixing the issue that auras have, in my opinion. Coming in at number 8, Raphael, Fiendish Savior, 3 black and a red, devil, noble 4/4 with flying. Other demons, devils, imps, and tieflings you control get +1/+1 and have lifelink. So we already have a really interesting tribal commander. Obviously, demons are a very popular tribe already. Devils, imps, and tieflings, not so much. So you could go any of those directions. Also, the fact that you're giving lifelink is interesting. And Rakdos Colors, that's a pretty unique effect, but I really like the second ability, and that's why I have them on this list. At the beginning of each end step, if a creature card was put into your graveyard from anywhere this turn, create a 1/1 red devil creature token with, when this creature dies, it deals 1 damage to any target. So that's the ability I'm going to build around. You could just do a tribal theme with this, I suppose. But for me, I'm concentrating on, I want to get that trigger on every end step so I can get that devil token, which will then get the bump from my commander, right? Just ignoring all those other tribes, all the devil creature tokens that you're creating are all now going to be 2/2s with lifelink that when they die, deal 1 damage to any target. That's pretty fantastic. It'd be very easy to build your entire deck around just getting a creature card into your graveyard from anywhere on everyone's turn. There's a lot of different ways to do that, right? You can sacrifice, you can discard, you can mill, lots of different ways to build around this guy. I think he's a pretty neat commander. Coming in at number 7, the Council of 4, 3 white, blue, human noble, 08. And again, like I talked about before, having a commander with a giant butt like that is really handy. Makes for just a fantastic blocker, because if you're a target, throwing your commander in the way of a 7/7 creature feels pretty good. Whenever a player draws their second card during their turn, you draw a card. Whenever a player casts their second spell during their turn, you create a 2/2 white knight creature token. So I didn't love this guy when I first talked about it. It is very generic. You know, you're just sitting there drawing cards and making tokens. You want people to be drawing cards and casting spells, which they're going to be doing anyway. However, what I didn't realize about this is it's any player, right? This is you as well. So when you draw your second card during your turn, you get to then draw a third card, right? This will trigger for you. Also, when you cast your second spell on your turn, you get to create the knight token. And I kind of like that. You know, you can do a little bit of token theme. You can do knight tribal here. That's probably the way I would go with it. I would probably put some Howling Mind type of effects in here that will let your opponents draw cards, which will then draw you more cards, but will also be in a bit of a huggy theme and will keep your opponents off of you, which I think is a good strategy. Meanwhile, you're just cranking out those knight tokens and then throwing in some knight tribal stuff as well to help close out the game. I think this is a pretty interesting commander. Coming in at number 6, Khedira Caller of the Small. 1, a green and a white Orc Ranger 3/3 with Trample. When Khedira Caller of the Small deals combat damage to a player, for each token you control, create a 1/1 white rabbit creature token. I think this might be the best token commander now. I don't know. Maybe I'm going too far on this. The potential here for creating tokens is really, really high. You just have to get in for damage. Getting a damage trigger off your commander is not going to be very difficult, especially when it has Trample. And then for each token you control, you're creating that 1/1 white rabbit creature token, and then those count towards the next one, right? So if I have 3 tokens in play, I'm going to create 3 white rabbit creature tokens, and then the next time I connect, assuming I didn't create any other tokens any other way, which would be very easy to do, but assuming I didn't, now I'm creating 6 white rabbit creature tokens the next time. So this is like a cumulative effect. It just gets out of hand really, really quickly. I think this is going to be a popular one in the format for sure, because it really is maybe the best token creation commander that we have now. And I will also point out that it probably goes in the 99 of a ton of decks as well, right? Any of those Selesnya or Naya token creation commanders, this is going to go in the 99 of those decks as well. So we're going to see this card a lot in the format, I think. Coming in at number 5, Faldorn Dreadwolf Herald. 1 red and a green human druid 3/3. Whenever you cast a spell from exile or a land enters the battlefield under your control from exile, create a 2/2 green wolf creature token, and you can pay 1 and tap, discard a card, exile the top card of your library. You may play it this turn. So I like this commander a lot because I really do think there's a lot of ways you can go with it. It's very open-ended. It's doing a lot of stuff, but then also open-ended. I really like commanders like that. You are doing the cast stuff from exile, so you want to do a lot of impulse draw. You're also making the wolf token, so you can do some wolf tribal here. You're also in a discard theme because you have a discard on your commander. That's really important as well, I think. Do not forget about that. There's a lot of great support, especially in red, for a discard theme that I think you're going to be wanting to put in this deck. This is another one that I think is going to be really, really popular. There is no limit on the when you cast a spell from exile, so if you do a bunch of stuff from exile on your turn, you're going to create a 2/2 green wolf creature token for every time you do it, and that can get out of hand pretty darn fast, I think. Coming in at number 4, Alundo The Seer. 2 blue and a green human shaman 3/5. Tap, draw a card, then exile a card from your hand and put a number of time counters on it equal to its mana value. It gains whenever the last time counter is removed from this card. If it's exiled, you may cast it without paying its mana cost. If you cast a creature spell this way, it gains haste until end of turn, then remove a time counter from each other card you own in exile. So this card really climbed up the list for me because, again, originally when I talked about it in my spoiler video, I was like, oh, you're just giving cards suspend, but that's not what you're doing at all. You're putting time counters on them, but the time counters do not get removed unless you use your commander's ability, right? That's the only way to get those time counters off of there. I did a little bit of research. I did could not find any other card in the game that will remove those time counters from those cards you exile with your commander, this is the only way you can do it, which for me makes this card a lot more interesting. Rather than just a boring old, hey, here's another, put a card into exile and suspend it, you're doing it in a very interesting way where every time you use your commander's ability, you're now removing the time counters from all the stuff in exile. So it would probably be a better strategy to put smaller things in exile that you will get right away. Like if you have a 1 mana value card in exile with this ability, the next time you use the ability, it will remove that time counter and you get to cast it for free, right? If you got a 2 and a 3 there, it'll remove a couple of time counters, and then the next time you do it, one will cast and the next one will cast. So that's the way I would kind of go with this commander. Untapping your commander so you can use that ability a few times in each turn, I think is going to be really important as well. You can really get a ton of value off this guy. And I will also point out, then remove a time counter for each other card you own in exile means that your commander can get removed, and then when you bring it back, it will still remove the counters from any other card that is already exiled. So that's important as well. You won't lose those cards if your commander gets removed. Really, really interesting commander, I think. Coming in at number 3, another really interesting commander, Baba the Saga, Night Witch, 1 black and a green, a human warlock, 3/3. Tap, sacrifice up to 3 permanents. If there are 3 or more card types among the sacrificed permanents, each opponent loses 3 life, you gain 3 life, and you draw 3 cards. So this card might seem very linear in the way you want to build it, but I don't know if it necessarily is. First of all, it is very open-ended because you're sacrificing up to 3 permanents. I mean, I guess you could sacrifice less than 3 permanents if you want to. And yes, it is possible to get this effect by sacrificing less than 3 permanents, right? If you do want the lose 3 life, gain 3 life, and draw 3 cards, which I think you probably want to do, you're not going to want to use your commander's ability unless you're going to get that. You can actually sacrifice less than 3 permanents by sacrificing something that has more than 1 type, right? If you sacrifice something, for example, that is both an artifact and an enchantment, that will fulfill 2 card types, right? So if I sacrifice a Bow of Nylea, then I sacrifice a creature on top of that, I've now sacrificed an artifact, an enchantment, and a creature, only sacrificing 2 permanents, but that will fulfill what my commander wants. So that's a very interesting way to go with it, where you can try to figure out how many different card types can I fit on 1 card so that I can maximize the amount of card types I get in there. You can also sacrifice lands, so you can go a bit of a land theme here, sacrificing your own creatures. I think the easiest way to go probably would be I sacrifice a land and a creature and maybe like a treasure token, something like that. There is a lot of different ways to go with it, but also what I like about this is your win con is stapled on your commander, right? Just having your opponents lose 3 life every time you use this ability might be enough to just close out the game, right? So might want to also concentrate on protecting your commander if you build this deck, because it definitely will be a target. Coming in at number 2, Glunch the Bestower, 1 green and a white jellyfish 05 with flying. At the beginning of your end step, choose a player. They put 2+1/+1 counters on a creature they control. Choose a second player to draw a card, then choose a third player to create 2 treasure tokens. So again, this is another commander that when I first talked about in the spoiler video, I wasn't super impressed, felt very huggy, and you definitely could make a fantastic hug deck with this commander if you wanted to. But the more I thought about it, the more interesting things I thought you could do with it. This is such an interesting, versatile commander. In my opinion, you could just play a hug deck. You could play a politics deck where you are constantly asking people around the table, hey, who wants the card draw? Don't attack me next turn. Hey, who wants treasure tokens? I need you to remove that thing for me. You could do a heavy politics deck with this guy. I actually built the deck myself. It's already on my channel. You can check it out if you want. I tried to go as much as I can with let's give our opponents the upside, but let's not really make it an upside, right? So depending on the cards that we have, depending on what our opponents are doing, that will make our decision on which thing we want to choose for us and which thing we want to choose for which opponent, right? There's a lot of facets to play into how you're going to play out this deck. Just a very open-ended commander, very interesting commander. You know, for me, commanders that are really interesting build-arounds always move way up the list, in my opinion. This is not going to be a super popular one, I think, but it is a very interesting one. But coming in at number 1 is Merkel, Lord of Bones. 4 white, a black, and a green. God 7/5. As long as your life total is less than or equal to half your starting life total. Merkel, Lord of Bones, has indestructible, so I don't know how often that's going to happen. I mean, you could try to get there if you want to. Certainly later in the game, when your life total is a lot lower, it's kind of nice to have your commander indestructible. This ability, though, is why this guy's number 1. Whenever another non-token creature you control dies, you may exile it. If you do, create a token that's a copy of that card, except it's an enchantment and loses all other card types. Again, the amount of directions you can go with this is why I find this so interesting. I talked about this again in the spoiler video I did with this, where I can do like value-y creatures like a Sakura Tribe Elder. I sacrifice it. It comes back as an enchantment. Then I can just sacrifice it again. Doesn't matter that it's not a creature anymore. Get another land. So I'm just getting lots of value out of all my creatures. And there's tons and tons of creatures to choose from there. Also, I can go the route of I play like an Elishnorn, and my Elishnorn is going to be a huge target. It's probably going to die. Then it's going to come back as an enchantment. It's still going to have all those abilities, but it's not going to be a creature. And enchantments are way harder to remove in the format than creatures are. Creatures are really easy to remove. Enchantments, not so much. So now I have an enchantment on the board that says all my opponent's creatures get -2/-2, and all mine get +2/+2. And my opponents are going to have a hard time getting it off the board, I think. That's another really interesting way to go with this. You could even do a little bit of an enchantment tribal here. You can put in stuff like Sterling Grove and Greater Oromancy that are now going to give those creatures that come back as an enchantments Shroud, so your opponents can't get them off the board. There is probably a lot of shenanigans you can get into here. I'm sure people have been doing the research where what is a really interesting creature that I can find that when it comes back, it's no longer going to be in a creature and it's going to be an enchantment. There's probably some really interesting interactions you can get into there, and we will probably be discovering them along the way. I don't know how popular this guy is going to be, but I really think he is one of the most interesting commanders we've seen in a long time. Because of that losing all other card types thing, that is a really powerful effect that I think you could do a lot of different interesting things with. But that is it. That is my pick for the top 10 commanders from Battle for Baldur's Gate. Overall, it was a pretty good set. I would like to see a few more interesting commanders. 10 is pretty good. Obviously, we're always getting tons of cards in this format, so you can't really complain about the amount of commanders or 99 cards that we are getting because there's probably already enough. But as a commander set, if I was rating this as a commander set, especially Commander Legends set, not even close to the first one in my opinion. First Commander Legends set had an absolute ton. I could easily do a top 30 commanders from that set. 99 cards as well. The first commander set blows this one out of the water in my opinion as far as commanders and 99 cards. Still some pretty interesting stuff though. Definitely a few things that I'm going to include in some of my decks. What do you guys think? What are some commanders maybe that I missed that aren't on this list that you guys think are great, that you're super excited about building around? Let me know in the comments below. But that is it for today, and thanks for tuning in.